Antisemitism matters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Dana Download. I'm your host, Dana Arshan Kraslow, and I am thrilled to kick off this journey with you. A little bit about me. I am a journalist with a strong passion for storytelling, shaped by over a decade in broadcast news, reporting on everything from local communities to global events. My work has taken me from the anchor desk to the field, where I really uncovered stories that mattered and amplified voices that needed to be heard. This podcast is proudly presented on behalf of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County, or HMTC for short, as we call it. And more specifically, this program is called HMTV, Humanity Matters TV. And our Holocaust Center is dedicated to educating about the past and inspiring a more compassionate future. This mission resonates deeply with me as I am the proud granddaughter of an Auschwitz concentration camp survivor, Nat Ross. You're going to hear me talk about my poppy a lot. He passed away at 101 years old in December of 2023, and he's my inspiration for everything that I do. I also interview Holocaust survivors on behalf of HMTC every single week. I interview them in person all over the tri-state area, and I put together short documentaries on their lives. So I will talk about that more throughout this series. So what's the Dana Download all about? Well, there's no single theme because life, especially my life, does not fit neatly into a box. Instead, I am going to invite a very eclectic mix of guests from different corners of my life and all different industries that spark my curiosity. From journalists to artists to authors, historians, innovators, each episode will be a fresh conversation offering insights, inspiration, and a few surprises. So today, I'm excited to tell you about my first surprise. I'm going to introduce our first ever guest on the Dana Download, someone who is so incredibly special to me, but also brings a powerful perspective to today's conversation. Please welcome my husband, Michael Kraslow. And I couldn't think of a better first guest. I came to you and said, "You're my first guest. Will you do it?" And you didn't hesitate.
Of course, anything to help.
Thanks. So why did you want to come on today?
Well, first off, I've been interviewed by you many a time. It's the first time actually on camera, so nothing new here.
Is that your way of saying I interview you every day when I see you?
Yeah, mainly I would say your favorite time to do it is right before bed when I'm trying to go to sleep?
You know I can't sleep and like to ask you questions at night.
Yeah, of course.
And you want to just start on a light note and just tell everyone like how we met and a little bit about our story.
Yeah, we met at a bar that I think is no longer existing down on Lower East Side, 13th Step.
East Village, sorry.
And I know you like to dispute this, but I distinctly remember you taking my phone out of my hand and putting your number in it and saying, "Call me."
Okay, so I'm going to set the record straight. He says I grabbed his phone and put my number in. I didn't. I was completely sober. I never drank because I was working weekends as a reporter, and I didn't want to scream and he couldn't hear me, and I didn't want to lose my voice in the bar. So I said, "Let me put my number in." And you remember me grabbing it and putting it in. But whatever, we ended up here.
You remember it one way, I remember it the real way. Whatever you want to say.
And we ended up here with two beautiful girls. So thank you. The reason I wanted to have you on, obviously, you know, you're so special and who would be a better first guest, but you have become so passionate about fighting anti-Semitism and what you see happening in our country, in our city. So let's start with, I guess, your background, where you're from, what you do for work, and your experience at Columbia, and I'll just let you talk and I'll chime in.
Sure. So born and raised here in New York, Long Island more specifically, and I would say the concept of anti-Semitism, obviously aware of it, but didn't fortunately experience it much growing up, living in a rather sheltered lifestyle amongst many of my own kind. So to see what happened on October 7th, more specifically to see the reaction to it in places that I've spent a large part of my life really opened my eyes to maybe how few friends we really have out there, And, I remember distinctly, so I went to undergrad at the University of Michigan, and I remember being in a class, and I had a black classmate who came up to me and said, I really respect the Jewish people and how you guys are always there trying to support each other. I think Michigan, he grew up, I think, closer to Detroit, where maybe his counterparts were not as supportive of his successes or his group's successes. And, I kind of just inherently knew to do that. But I think when you see what's happening in today's world, you understand why. It's our only chance of survival. So it's something that I guess you don't even realize is being ingrained into you as part of the Jewish culture to support those around you and those have like-minded views, because there is opportunity for all of us to succeed, even though there's some people out there screaming that there's only room for a small portion of the world to succeed.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a minute. I also just wanted to, so you're a venture capitalist. You invest in, what is it, larger
I invest in later stage technology companies. So a couple that people probably would have heard of, SpaceX, XAI, which is also now X. So if anyone's playing around with any of the AI tools, Grok, for example, that's something that we've invested in. A lot of other ones that more maybe not as well known, but companies like Databricks, which is a pretty large company, Runway, which is something maybe you'll use in the studio at some point in the near future, which is AI for your video and editing, to name a few.
And I always tell you I'm hesitant to use AI because I'm a journalist. I love writing. I never want to look for the easy way out when it comes to writing a script. But I did use Grok to come up with the Dana download. I said, can you come up with a good alliteration name for my podcast? So thank you, Grok.
It's not meant to replace. It's meant to supplement.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to kind of ideate at scale.
I love that. So I asked about what you do for work. I brought that up so that we can transition into Columbia Business School, where you went for business school, and you went there to transition to venture capital from private equity. But what was your experience like at Columbia? Did you ever experience any anti-Semitism? And then what was it like to see the protests and the demonstrations happening recently?
Yeah, so the issue of the day was not anti-Semitism, so there was nothing that directly affected me, but I did have a close friend that grew up near the southern border in Texas, and he was, and you know him, you know Nick, and we were talking, and he's like, well, you don't realize how one-sided the debate is here. Like, the right to bear arms is something that's Second Amendment in our Constitution, if I believe correctly.
He was saying how one-sided it is in New York?
Just at Columbia, on the campus, so he saw the super liberal viewpoint that somehow has adopted anti-Semitism coming through in a different way. And he's like, if I wanted to talk to someone about the right to bear arms or any of these other things that are important to other parts of the country, immediately shut down. And I distinctly remember I was there when Trump was elected on his first term. I remember people in my cluster, which is that group of people that take classes with you your first year, bawling in tears as if their world has ended. And to me, that was always a little funny, not because, they disagreed with who was elected, but because of their reaction to it, that all of a sudden their world was now over without someone even serving a day of their term. So looking back on it, I think there were definitely some signs that this is where it could turn if, again, the topic du jour was something that didn't necessarily agree with you, so I'm not entirely surprised, but I'm probably more surprised that one of the major political parties has chosen to latch on to the concept of anti-Semitism as a tool to kind of wrangle voters, which just means that there's enough people in the continental United States that that's a big enough issue that they can, think will help them win elections, which is a scarier thought.
I do just want to state quickly that HMTC is a 501c3 nonprofit, and I have no political opinion here. Mike and I do not agree with the same on every topic. So everything he says today is his own opinion. But I will say I am politically fluid. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm very much about the candidate and who in that moment I believe will be best for our country. I voted for Republicans. I voted for Democrats. Mike has voted for Republicans. Mike has voted for Democrats. So I do want to be clear that whatever we're saying today, you don't necessarily feel a certain way about a certain party. You just find that there are different groups within each party that are going in very distinct directions.
I think the point I'm trying to make is less so about a party versus another, is that there are clearly politicians' main goal is to get reelected, and they will say whatever they need to get reelected. And doing that is kind of a better pulse of not necessarily what the politician thinks themselves, but what they think the majority of their constituents think. And the fact that this has become a political debate is a scary issue, because there are enough people who actually do have anti-Semitic thoughts and motives out there that you started on the left, but you're starting to see a little bit on the right as well, think that by saying these things as part of their platform will help them sway meaningful votes and get them elected.
Yeah. And I know you have strong feelings about Zoran Mamdani, and we're going to talk about him in a moment. But let's talk first about the article that you wrote right after October 7th. I had never, you we both grew up pretty reformed. I grew up in a more conservative Jewish family. You grew up incredibly reformed, eating bacon and, chicken parm on the holidays. And to me, when all of a sudden on October 7th, you wrote an article where you were so passionate and so outraged, I'd never seen that side of you before. And, our kids belong to a religious Jewish preschool and Hebrew school. And I always thought that you wouldn't want to take that path. Like, you'd want to be more reformed, and you really like the tradition of these schools. So what has changed in you?
I don't think anything changed. I think you're probably misinterpreting my reaction. So my reaction is more just the nature of, honestly, it ties into what my job is, right? So I'm looking at right now, like, the cutting edge in AI technology, and to a lot of people that's scary. There's things that are changing rapidly, and it's my job to go in and understand what is actually happening and have some level of prediction on the future based on what I'm seeing play out on the field. And what was shocking to me was how much anti-Semitism there was, not in the Middle East, where, we know that Palestinians are indoctrinated from, preschool to try to kill Jews. In Times Square, which was, 200 yards behind my office. So once I saw that, I had to understand why. So the article I wrote was less, me standing up for Jews, and more trying to understand, why is this even possible? How is this even possible? What did we miss over the last year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years that led to this? And that's what I was doing. And when I speak out now, is just not to say do this, do that, because I fundamentally believe, as like Americans, and talk about being Jewish, but American first, that you're not supposed to tell people what to do. The whole beauty of our Constitution, the way that this government was set up, is to do whatever you want as long as you don't tell someone else what to do. And there's a large swath of people trying to tell you how to live, how to behave. And I personally believe the biggest threat to our society is some form of socialism / Sharia law, which is entirely about telling people what to do, how to behave, how to live their lives, and is the exact opposite of the freedoms that America stands for.
Can you give an example? What do you think is being, what group is telling us to do what right now?
I mean, just forget about Mamdani's kind of rhetoric towards Jewish people, right? I'm sure there are plenty of people who will debate how serious he is about that.
And they'll say that he has staffers who are Jewish who work for him. They'll say he's just anti-Israel.
But I think that's a losing argument.
And we want to say that there are other Democrats we would have loved to vote for. So this is not bashing the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but you asked me a question about who's telling me. And it's typically politicians, so it's going to go somewhere in that direction.
Yeah, I know.
So the question is, take that aside. He's a socialist. So socialism is telling you where to eat, what to eat, how to spend your money, how much money you're allowed to make. He's literally offering up bread lines as one of his kind of political recommendations, right? So one of the pillars he's standing on is, free or subsidized supermarkets. Now, to someone who's struggling to pay for food, that sounds great, but you don't understand the ramifications of that. When in history have bread lines worked out for freedoms? Just take any example throughout history. Soviet Union, didn't work. Mao's Great Leap Forward, 50 million Chinese died. Only when they brought on capitalism did 800 million Chinese come out of poverty. Just look at North Korea and South Korea. One is communist or socialist, some form of that, and the other is capitalist. And you can go up in space and see half of it at night lit up and the other half not lit up. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out and get up there to figure out which side is which. So
it's not the free supermarkets. It's the start of a new trend.
It's the start of, I don't feel like I can do it myself, so I'm going to rely on the government to do that. And then the government takes more and more control. And then the excuse of government can't facilitate what it needs to facilitate for you without it stepping in and taking these freedoms away from you is the scary and slippery slope.
What type of reaction have you, so you always post about AI and tech, and on LinkedIn you posted your October 7th article that you wrote. What type of reaction did you get overall? Any backlash or mostly just support?
No, it was mostly support. I think there's, probably as someone who felt immediately affected by that, you feel fairly alone. So anyone who speaks up, whether or not they have, call it an outlet, a very obvious dog in the fight or not, is meaningful to. So much more support. Actually, I didn't get any kind of negative feedback.
Did you lose any followers? Any repercussions from it? I'm
not like you. I don't have followers. You are the family social media exposure. So I wasn't at risk of losing anybody. But there were a lot of people who reached out and had feedback. But I'll be honest, like LinkedIn is probably not the right place for this. I mean, I think, again, to be very clear, I think capitalism is the greatest tool or system ever created to advance human society and freedoms. And right now, the United States is the peak of that, or the shining city on a hill describing that. I think everything that chips away at that is both chipping away at the possibilities for humanity to advance and possibility for us to maintain our freedoms and have kind of more individualized thought. And I mean, I'm a venture capitalist. The word capitalist is in my job title. It's something that I actually really believe in, and all these other kind of thoughts, beliefs, and actions kind of stem from that.
I can't remember. You wrote an article to Columbia. You wrote a letter to Columbia recently. You did send it to them, and we were debating. You kind of wanted to post it on social media, and I was.
It's a purpose to bring it up now because it's not really a kind of anything new, but I was.
Well, but talk about why you were so outraged by the letter that you received and how you handled it. And I'm jumping from topic to topic because we only have about 10 minutes left, and I want to hit a lot with you.
Yeah, I would just say that the entire Ivy League institution kind of misplaced the branded trust that they've earned over the last, called 7,500 years, to the point where it's clearly corrupted. And, honestly, it's not something that I'm proud to say I went to Columbia. Like, I wish that I could get the money back for my degree. I know everyone might not, maybe there's still some people who value that degree, but to me, the principles that which it stands on no longer are valid to me.
And to clarify, it's because you felt they did nothing to protect Jews on campus.
More so, it was just a corrupted, that was a symptom. Right? It's like saying, oh, my leg hurts, right? And what you really diagnosed is the broken leg. Like the leg hurting was anti-Semitism on campus. The issue was the amount of foreign influence that has infiltrated those institutions to no longer teach and respect the values for the country for which they stand. So obviously there's a lot of kind of legal action going on around them, those Ivy League institutions today, and quite frankly, in my opinion, it's the right action just because they do receive tons of subsidies. There has been decades of people going to college thinking that just because you have a degree, then all of a sudden you're going to print money on the other end, whereas you actually need to go to school to learn a skill and then use that skill to create value in the world, and that seems to have been lost. So it's one of those things where like the system was very clearly broken. You can look at it also from the cost of college versus inflation, how it's increased substantially higher rate. But the system has been broken for a long time. Obviously, not it didn't break before I went through it, but it's one of those things where it's just more of the entire system was broken. The way they react to it made it very clear that they either didn't have the fortitude or the capabilities or the interest in doing what I think most rational people would think is right.
Yeah. This is a very delicate topic, but I did want to talk about the war, the Israel-Hamas war. It is absolutely heartbreaking to see suffering and deaths on both sides. As you know, I have a lifelong childhood friend, a Muslim guy who I loved dearly, who told me that I was a complete and utter disgrace for supporting Israel. And I had another friend who said that I had blind support for Israel. And for anyone listening, I want, and maybe you and I can come up articulately to explain why this is so necessary for our country's survival to fight back. And do you want to start and I'll chime in? I know
you want me to go down this rabbit hole? I'm happy to if you want to. But
you need to be a little more delicate with your
No, I don't think it has to be delicate at all. I think the key here is you've watched what has unfolded over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's very clear that there are evils in this world. I think what people underestimate is how far-reaching these evils exist, and a lot of it stems from the current Iranian regime, which fortunately was significantly handicapped over the last couple months, and even beyond that. But the concept of like their ring of terror and the impact on that region, this isn't a Muslim Jew thing. It is a hate of freedom versus not hate of freedom thing. And you can look at plenty of countries in the Middle East, the UAE and Emirates, Saudis have found a way to embrace capitalism and all the benefits that it offers. You may not agree with everything that happens in their country. I mean, you can still go to places like Singapore, which have also really embraced the concept of capitalism and not be able to chew gum. You get hit with a stick of bamboo. I don't agree with that. I wouldn't necessarily want to live under those restrictions. But they are focused on themselves and bettering themselves as far as instead of taking down others, where it's very clear that, again, nothing against Iranian people. Every Iranian person that I've met, it's been honestly great, and this is probably the best example. But the Ayatollah and that core regime is really focused on constricting power, control over as many people as possible. And again, back to my original rule, you can do what you want, just don't tell me what to do. And they're very focused on telling you what to do.
So when people say that Israel's indiscriminately bombing and the death toll is devastating, which it is, why it is so hard, I feel, in these discussions to make people understand that there will be no Israel if we don't wipe out Hamas. They have vowed to repeat October 7th over and over and over again. And Sam Fried, an IDF soldier who we're both friends with, he tells us how they drop pamphlets and how he has personally escorted Palestinians to safety. And I don't understand why Israel's the only country in the world that has to defend itself for defending itself. Imagine if Mexico or Canada came into the U.S. and did to our people what Hamas did. How would we retaliate, and would anyone ever say a word about it? No.
I think this is a losing argument, as it's proven over the last couple of years, mainly because people don't care, right? All they're going to see is Israel is a sophisticated society, and the remaining Palestinians are not. They don't care that they've been indoctrinated since birth to be rewarded for killing a Jew. Honestly, you see videos of them killing and raping people, heard stories of horrible things such as cutting off a woman's breast in front of her and playing soccer with it as they rape her. That doesn't matter. it has no influence on everyone else because they're going to say you lied, you did this, you control this.
And there's no condemnation against Hamas.
What I'm saying is it's a losing proposition to keep on going down.
So do I even respond to people or no?
I think you just have to ask them, like, do you want to live there? If you want to live there, go there. Go make that place better. If you don't want to live there, then you should focus on improving life here, and that involves doing things to make your life better, not make others' lives worse. And the concept of a scapegoat is basically just saying, I can't do anything, right? It's that person's fault. Once that person's gone, my life will be better. And unfortunately, Jews have been the most popular scapegoat throughout history. That's what happened in Germany. It's what's starting to take place and happen now. You have to be very careful going down that slippery slope, because I don't remember all the words from that poem, but first they came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew, so I said nothing. Then they came for the gays. I wasn't gay. I didn't say anything. Eventually they get to you. And I don't think you have to look very far of this being a Jewish versus Muslim thing. Look at Lebanon. Lebanon was Christian. It's not anymore. It was one of the most prosperous countries in the Middle East. But once you get to a majority that wants Sharia law, that's the law.
And to be very clear, we both have Muslim friends. We're just talking about extremists.
Again, it's not Muslim. There's a group of people that are evil, and don't assume that because they're evil, they're dumber than the smart people, than the good people. They're very smart. They're very sophisticated. What do you think's going on at universities and TikTok? The real way that this took place was they funneled tons of money into these institutions, redid the education system there. Now they're trying to do the same thing here. The scariest thing about Mamdani winning is not necessarily even the socialism initially, because there's probably very little he can do right off the bat, but he can determine what your children are taught.
I think he can replace the chancellor of education for
right?
city schools.
And that's how it happens. Why do you think that the Palestinians want to kill all the Jews? Because for 20 years, they've been told, you have to kill the Jews. You think someone wakes up saying, oh my God, I have to hate that person? We have little children. They'll walk up to anyone and they'll smile and they'll hug. You have to teach them stranger danger. So the education system is the scary piece. And that's what is, quite frankly, we're fighting for right now in this country before we lose all the things that we've built over the last 250 years.
Thank you so much, Mike. I could talk to you forever. I feel like we've barely delved into any of these topics. I just kind of wanted to hit a few to get your viewpoints across. I think this is the most we've spoken in like the past few months. We're so busy. We have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. We never really get to like sit down and have discussions like this.
No, it's just you have your list of questions you wanted to ask me beforehand. And when we talk normally, you're thinking of the next one before you even get my answer. So we've talked. You just maybe think of the next question before we actually get the answer.
You're saying I just jump from question to question too quickly. Okay, noted. I'll try to do better. I came up with a question that I want to ask every guest after our podcast, after our episode. So we'll be ending in a moment. I did give this question to you beforehand, so you had a moment to think about it. But I'm going to ask you, what's one moment in your life that changed how you see the world? And it could be multiple moments.
Well, October 7th is probably too simple. We've talked about most of the ways that's changed my perception. So I will say the birth of our first child, Maya. I think I never understood the concept time is money until you have to pay somebody to be able to like walk outside your house by yourself.
Oh, you mean like having a babysitter? And
having a babysitter, you're responsible for another little human, and you have to think about reprioritizing all your free time and the things that you can do, that you choose to do, get very specific. So when you're really little, it's like, okay, you play 10 different sports, you figure which ones you like, you get kind of good at all of them, you figure out this one's better, you move forward, and then you're like, oh, well, I need to start studying for school, so you take a little bit, and now it's like, okay, well, you clearly have a core responsibility with your family and a core responsibility with your job, and it's like, how do you fit in all this extra stuff? It's not even just, okay, go family time, job time, it's those two cover 100% of your time, and you have to really fight for every little inch of free time around that.
Well, it's so funny. You're insinuating how difficult this balance is, yet you want a third child. Can you explain that rationale, please?
I don't think this is a conversation for on air, but more little babies, the better.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you so much. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
That's it. Just incredibly proud of you and the work that you're doing. Keep it up, and hopefully we get some more Emmys on the mantle.
You're very sweet. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And can't wait to maybe get you some more followers when we share the episode.
It's okay.
And thanks to our director, Priscilla, who's the best, who recorded this for us today, and to the rest of the HMTV team. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining us on this very first episode of the Dana Download.